Hello, everyone, and welcome to your top human rights organization review. I am your host, Bryce Dolan.
And I'm co-host Zach Henry.
And today we're going to visit four different human rights organizations and visit 5 different topics. First, we're going over to the UN Watch organization, then to the Human Rights Watch organization, and then we will finish with Human Rights Foundation and 2 articles from Refugees International. Now, let's begin in South Africa with the UN Watch. Now, South Africa is often dubbed the Rainbow Nation. It recently has come under criticism this last week following its decision to abstain from a key vote in support of gay rights during the last session of the UN Human Rights Council. Now, this is a huge issue. South Africa has been known for its prominence in supporting gay rights, not least since South Africa's progressive 1996 constitution is unique for its explicit prescription of discrimination on the grounds of sexual orientation. So, in order to defend this, basically not really taking a stance, and in an interview with one of the representatives at the UN Human Rights Council, she came up with these points why they did not voice their support. Now, she first said South Africa did not oppose the vote on LGBT rights, it just abstained. It said the approach of countries who supported the UN resolution was arrogant. And then she goes on to say that many developed countries opposed South Africa's resolutions and that no South African NGO approved the resolution. Now, NGOs are non-governmental organizations, usually human rights groups, advocacy groups, organizations like that. None of these groups within South Africa have supported the rights for the LGBT community as well. What do you make of this, really, Zach?
Right, so it seems like right now South Africa is really trying to quell some of the tension that's going on in that area and in all of Africa, really. Just that a lot of people don't support the LGBTQ community, they don't support their members, and they go as far to as, beheading and killing a lot of these members as well. I will say that for South Africa, this is a little disappointing. As you said, that 1996 constitution was extremely progressive for the LGBTQ community, and they just really haven't progressed since then. Of course, they have a ton of race problems still. They had the apartheid, everyone knows that. So they may not be progressive in that sense necessarily, but in this sense, it would be nice for them to set an example, really.
Yeah, absolutely. Moving on to our next article, we're actually going to stay on the topic of gay rights and the LGBTQ community. Moving over to the Human Rights Watch organization and this article in Iraq. Now, state and non-state actors in Iraq should heed the prominent Shia cleric's statement on July 2016 banning violence against those who do not conform to gender norms. Now, since early 2009, Human Rights Watch has documented kidnappings, executions, and torture by militia groups, including al-Sadr Mahdi's army of gay men and men perceived to be gay. The killings have continued unabated. Now, a Human Rights Watch report found that in early 2009, Iraqi militia members began a wide-reaching campaign of extrajudicial executions, kidnappings, and torture of men suspected of homosexual conduct or of not conforming to masculine gender norms, and that Iraq authorities did nothing to stop any of this. Now, the killings began in the Baghdad neighborhood of Sadr City, a Mahdi army stronghold, and were then replicated by members of militia groups in many cities across Iraq. Now, Mahdi army spokesman promoted fear about the third sex and the feminization of Iraqi men, as well as suggesting that militia action was the remedy. Now, finally, the head of one of the groups whose members have carried out serious abuses against lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender people in Iraq is condemning these heinous acts. Said Joe Stork, Deputy Middle East Director, "We hope this will change behavior in successors to the Mahdi army and other ranks and spur the government to hold accountable those who commit these crimes." Now, even though they do have this figure coming out and stating he was banning violence against the LGBT community.
Referring to al-Sadr.
Yes. Obviously, it's continuing. Now, not only is this just, a violence against community, it's almost like a primitive a primitive way of thinking. They're just like a third sex, almost referring to it as being gay is almost like being not from this world.
And it's even being suspected to be gay.
Yeah.
At this point, it is a witch hunt. For all intents and purposes, it is a witch hunt. You can seem to be gay. We joke about Monty Python when they're just like, she's a witch. Why? Because she has a wart on her nose. That type of thing. But it's something as simple as that. That is not a joke.
He's gay. Why? Because he's a little feminine.
Yeah.
He has a little bit of a lisp or something.
Exactly. And even just a slight suspicion of that can get you killed there.
That's horrible.
Yeah.
In a 2015 report, the Iraqi group Iraqweer and the U.S.-based organization Outright Action International, formerly the International Gay Lesbian Rights Commission, documented the kidnapping and murders of gay men by members of Iraqi militia groups, including the Brigades of Wrath and League of the Righteous, between 2009 and 2015. Now, the groups condemn the Iraqi government for standing by and allowing murderous hate violence to occur, fully aware of what is happening. Now, this is what's crazy about it, is that it didn't just happen this year, it didn't just happen last year. Since 2009, since 2006, this has been happening. So almost 10 years now.
Yeah, and there's really no end in sight
suffering
at this point. It's great for a prominent member to make a statement like that, but it's going to take more than one person. This has to be a movement. It has to be a change of thinking to actually get this to something to change.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, moving on to the Human Rights Foundation. Human Rights Foundation has received reports of egregious human rights violations occurring in Turkey. Now, for those of you who have been paying attention to the news, in recent months, the military in Turkey tried to basically throw a coup, overthrow the government, and it failed. Since then, it's actually been pretty crazy in Turkey. Now, it says here that in Turkey, as part of a state policy to ostracize thousands of alleged members of the Gulen movement, whose exiled leader is now accused of plotting the coup, Turkey's authoritarian regime must uphold due process standards and freedom of association to prevent the escalation of state-promoted violence. So right now, essentially, people who partook in the military coup, the failed military coup, are really facing extreme violence and persecution in Turkey at the hands of not only government and the government officials, but just the civilians as well.
Yeah,
now,
and of course they don't want anyone to know this. Even when the coup was happening,
absolutely,
the government was denying it, that it even happened.
Absolutely. They said there nothing ever happened, and once they actually got the military coup under control was when they actually came out and said there was an attempt at a military coup, but it was not successful. During that, though, following that coup, it is estimated that President Recep Tayyip Erdogan, he has shut down over 130 media outlets, including newspapers, radio, TV, magazines.
And a lot of those journalists were really well known in Turkey. It's not just like somebody.
And he's jailing journalists left and right, and not just some local TV reporter. They're well-known journalists,
it's like
written
jailing
journalists.
Anderson Cooper, or
exactly.
Kate Couric.
Exactly. So similarly, it's actually illegal for governments to use a state of emergency to pursue political agendas. So, in a sense, the President Erdogan, the president of Turkey, after this military coup, basically issued a state of emergency, which gave him immediate executive power to do anything he wants. And now he is using that. Now, it says here that as a signatory of the European Convention on Human Rights and the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, Turkey is bound by these international rules. Now, what he means here is that just the international rules, the international morals of basic human rights.
Yeah, and he doesn't want to be a part of that anymore. He essentially wants to do whatever he wants, which who knows what that is. And I'll also reinstate that those numbers that you said, 130 media stations, 3,000 judges, all that, that is what we know of.
Exactly.
And I'm sure there's a lot more going on behind the scenes that, of course, a journalist would never, ever get the opportunity to see.
And we've seen a control in the media like this in Korea. Mm-hmm. We've seen a leader do whatever he wants without any repercussions like this in in Russia and China.
Yeah.
With the the increasing aggression in the South China Sea.
Yeah.
Now, moving on to our next article here. Going to shift gears from more of the violence and the persecution to more of a kind of a natural disaster crisis happening in Zimbabwe. Now, according to the Refugees International Organization, at present, Zimbabwe's future appears precariously poised on an edge. 2 consecutive years of poor rains have resulted in the worst drought in 35 years. It is estimated that more than 4 million people will require emergency humanitarian aid to get them through the end of the lean season in March 2017. Now, the government is broke, and a farmer from a rural village in the Masvingo province was quoted saying, "We don't know where to go. We don't know who will help us." Now, they're saying that they're going to have to administer aid to these people to get them through March of 2017. What do, as a resident here, as just a innocent civilian, what do you do, Zach?
At this point, I think that you look at the option of leaving. Right now, politically in Zimbabwe, they're not restricted to that like they would be in some African nations. And of course, no one wants to leave their home. They want to make their life there, do the best with what they have. But if it doesn't get any better after this lean season, you're going to be seeing a lot of changes and a lot of people, I think, fleeing the country just to look for more opportunities in a place that has more resources, because their country does not anymore.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a good point. You just got to ask yourself, when is this enough? And unfortunately, you're going to have another refugee crisis on your hands. Eventually, these people, if this natural disaster does not solve itself, they're eventually going to have to leave their homes and find somewhere else to rebuild their lives. And we've seen from Syria, from South Sudan, that it's not as easy as it sounds.
And I mean, especially when you're one of the countries like Zimbabwe is that gets so much aid from foreign countries. You imagine if something broke out to where America could no longer provide that aid, or any other country that does.
Absolutely.
They're in trouble. They have nothing to live on.
Yeah, absolutely. To finish on the last article from Refugees International, though, we are going to take a look into one of the more powerful topics and more saddening topics, actually, of the show. Recently, a video that was posted on social media is gaining a lot of attention. It was a short clip of a little boy being pulled from the rubble of a building in Aleppo after one of the number of airstrikes that they've been experiencing. And this clip just shows this little boy, couldn't be more than 8 years old, just sitting in a chair, covered in dust, and then the whole right side of his face is just covered in blood, and you see this huge, I want to say it's a gash in his head, but it looks like a hole. It looks like you could look in there and see the kid's brain, because there's just a hole in his head, and he's just sitting there not crying. And it's extremely saddening, because when you hear Russia's bombing Aleppo, the capital of Syria, you don't think of things like that. But currently, more than 2 million people in Aleppo are not receiving the humanitarian assistance that could save their lives. The last aid delivered to the embattled city happened more than a week ago. Now, aid groups stand poised to deliver, but their access to the city is limited by circumstances of war and is impeded by airstrikes and continuous fighting and even chemical weapon attacks.
And I would say they are also very stricken by the political agenda.
Yes, absolutely.
That goes along with that. I mean, right now, Syria is just a hot plate, and relations between America and Russia are just right there. Like, Hillary wants to make it a no-fly zone, and all of these things combined together, along with, like you said, the shocking images we're actually seeing, how these people are becoming basically numb to it, just makes a culmination of, I would say, disgust at this point.
Absolutely. And they can't get in the city to administer aid, and the United States can administer them aid, because then Russia will look at that as, oh, you're allies with Syria, now you're against Russia. And while Russia continues to try and take over Aleppo, the aid is not able to get into the city because the roads are also destroyed. But the Russians have agreed, Zach, to a 3-hour window to allow aid to be brought into the city every day. Now, one of these spokespeople from the International Syria Support Group, actually the chief and the head of the International Syria Support Group, said that a minimum of 48 hours would be needed to get into the city and properly administer the aid.
Right. And that would be a ceasefire according to Putin, essentially.
Yep.
And who's to say whether the Syrian troops there are going to abide by those ceasefires.
Yeah, absolutely. If you want to look more into any of these articles, you can find all of the links to them below in the description. Feel free to subscribe to our YouTube channel, like us on Facebook, and follow us on Twitter. But for Zach and myself, Bryce, this was your top human rights organization review, and we'll see you next time.